Welcome to Friends and Fiction. 4 New York Times bestselling authors, endless stories. Novelists Mary Kay Andrews, Kristin Harmel, Kristy Woodson Harvey, and Patti Callahan Henry are 4 longtime friends with more than 70 published books between them. Together, they host Friends and Fiction, with author interviews and fascinating insider talk about publishing and writing, to highlight and support independent bookstores. They discuss the books they've written, the books they're reading now, and the art of storytelling. If you love books and you're curious about the writing world, you're in the right place.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Friends and Fiction Show. I am Patti Callahan Henry.
And I'm Kristy Woodson Harvey.
And this is Friends and Fiction, 4 New York Times bestselling authors with endless stories to support indie bookstores, authors, readers like you, and librarians. On this episode, we are so thrilled to welcome our friend JT Ellison to discuss her new novel, A Very Bad Thing.
I love that title.
I know. You feel like you have to whisper it. It's a very bad thing. But the book is not a very bad thing. The book is amazing. So the book was just released on November 1st, and we are so excited to talk to JT about it. And she has a really big announcement that she's telling us here. So stay tuned.
I'm so excited. And this was the perfect, right after Halloween book, don't you think?
Yes.
Okay, so first we have just a quick reminder to check out all the fun things going on in our Friends and Fiction community at friendsandfiction.com.
There at friendsandfiction.com, you find our show schedule. And you should look at that show schedule. You should see what we have coming up this winter. Details on upcoming in-person events, links to our bookshop.org page, a link to the award-winning Friends and Fiction, official book club with Brenda and Lisa, a link to our merch store, our newsletter sign up. In other words, if you want to know more about anything Friends and Fiction, and there's a lot to know, you can find us on friendsandfiction.com.
Also, we want to personally invite you to check out one of our very favorite things, our Friends and Fiction Endless Stories newsletter on Substack. It just gave me a really good idea that I'll tell you after. You can read all our free weekly posts on the Substack website or in the app. And if you subscribe, each new post will land in your inbox so you never miss a thing, which is great. It's so much more than just an email newsletter. And for paid subscribers, now we have a free newsletter, but if you upgrade to paid, it's very reasonable. We offer incredible extra content, including deeper dives with all our weekly show guests, plus monthly roundtable discussions between the 4 of us and our author friends. I just did one with Ann Garvin, Allie Brady, and Viola Shipman about summer camp and why setting a book there is so appealing. And Kristin just did a deep dive with Alice Hoffman all about Anne Frank.
It was so good. It was so good.
Yeah. We also recently hosted an Ask Me Anything session that was specifically for paid subscribers. We had so much fun, didn't we?
It was really fun.
Yeah. And we'll be announcing more VIP Zoom sessions just like that will be available only to paid members. So it costs just $5 a month or $50 a year for the paid subscription. You can always start free, see if you like it, and upgrade. So check us out at friendsandfiction.substack.com.
All right. Also, we have on there whenever there's a giveaway.
Yep.
We have on there what our live events are. We have special interviews for people that couldn't make it to the show. There's a lot going on.
There's a lot.
Yeah. So now let's welcome our friend JT Ellison. JT is our friend, as I said, but she is also the New York Times and USA Today best-selling author of more than 30 novels. I don't even know how many short stories. We're going to talk about it. This woman is so prolific with such spellbinding stories. She is the Emmy Award-winning co-host of the literary TV show A Word on Words. And she also writes, as if this is not enough writing, contemporary fantasy under the pen name Joss Walker.
With millions of books in print, her work has won critical acclaim and prestigious awards. Her titles have been optioned for television and published in 28 countries.
JT lives in Nashville, Tennessee with her husband and twin kittens, one of whom is a ghost, and we will be talking about that. And she is hard at work, as she always is, on her next novel.
Her new novel, A Very Bad Thing, was just released November 1st and is a top thriller about one author at the pinnacle of her career whose past threatens to destroy everything she has and everyone she knows.
Sean, could you bring our friend JT on, please? Hi, JT. Coming to us from New York City.
Coming to
That's right.
New York City.
That's awesome.
A very dark background.
It's very cool. It looks very spooky, like there might be something
Thriller-esque.
very bad back there.
Right? If it was so happy and joyful and pink and light, and like, this is a dark book. Let's go dark.
We'll do that for you. We'll be joyful and pink and light. So JT, welcome to the Friends and Fiction Show. Again, we never miss getting to talk to you when you have a new book out, and we're so glad to have you. So we're going to dive in. This novel is about a great world famous writer who knows how to deliver a juicy plot twist. But for one author, the biggest twist of all is her own murder. Columbia Jones has 20 hit titles and a highly anticipated movie tie-in. She's literally at the top of her game. Fans around the world adore her. But, because there'd be no story without the but, on the final night of her latest book tour, one face in the crowd makes her collapse on stage. And by the next morning, she is lying dead in a pool of blood. The police have nothing to go on at first, but then details emerge and many lives get shattered as the truth comes out. So if that is the plot, JT, is there anything you would add? And what would you say at its heart, A Very Bad Thing is truly about?
Oh, thank you guys. Thank you for having me. And thank you for that amazing
we love having
introduction.
Yeah,
So it's about really how we curate our lives.
Oh,
How we curate our lives for people. I mean, everything that we do, we are pretending, not pretending per se, but we certainly aren't always putting our hearts out online. We are showing the good parts. We don't like to show the bad parts. We certainly aren't revealing all of our secrets and the things that we would perhaps kill to keep hidden. Yeah. Which seems to be a really big theme in all of my work right now. I seem to be really latching onto that as a core. But yeah, Columbia Jones is the author's name, and she is at the pinnacle of her career when she is brutally murdered at the beginning of the book. And it was so incredibly hard to write a book with a murdered character because she's the main character of the book. Everything is about her. And all of a sudden, I mean, she's gone. And I didn't want to kill her. Patti, you know this. We talked while I was writing this book. I was having such a hard time because I was madly in love with this character. But she wasn't, I mean, she was dead. She was gone. And everything that I was discovering about her is as the readers are discovering it as well. Yep. And it was, I actually didn't even put her voice in until the very, very, very last edit, right before we went to copy edit. There was just something not right about the story.
Without her.
Yeah, it just wasn't, I needed to put her in, and I needed to let her have her own point of view. And it worked after that, but it was incredible. But I just realized, you know, we're sitting here and I'm in this spooky hallway, and the book has this spooky hallway, and it's set in New York. I did
a large part of it is. Yeah.
I did a lot of research. Columbia lives in New York because she's so involved in publishing. It's just so much more convenient for her. And yeah, she's got a brownstone like right up the street from where I am. And I didn't even.
Ooh, creepy chill.
Good timing on our part.
Yeah,
how
way to
cool
go.
is that?
So cool. Okay, so JT, you've hit on this a little bit. So your tagline is "Who killed Columbia Jones?" Yet you just told us that you really didn't want to kill her because you care about her so much. So if that wasn't the intent, what was the initial little spark or seed for this story? Where did it all begin?
Sadly, who killed Columbia Jones?
Ah.
It was such a great tagline, right?
Yeah,
And it was like, okay, well, why don't I just change the name of the character? I'll do something else. I just couldn't. We had been in, there's a town in Tennessee called Columbia, and we had gone down there, gone to, the little downtown, and we're walking around. And I was like, gosh, Columbia would be such a great character name. Columbia Jones, because balance, right? If you got 3 syllables, you have to have a single syllable. I like cadence in my character names. And then, of course, who killed Columbia Jones? And my husband's like, that's a story right there. That's a story. I was like, yeah, maybe it is. And then right after that, something happened in the Midwest, and President Biden wasn't able to go. It was a flood, I think, or some sort of, I don't remember exactly what it was. And a editor friend of mine was on Twitter and was saying, I don't understand why he can't just fly there. And I used to work in the White House. I did a lot of advance work, and I felt compelled to chime in, which I don't normally do, but I felt compelled to chime in and say, hey, listen, based in my experience, let me tell you why he can't just hop on a plane and fly there and comfort the people who are needing comfort. The advance work that needs to be done takes forever. And, they have to go there. They have to make sure there are no threats. They have to make sure that, the hotel is set up. They have all the food. They have the egress and the ingress and all of these things. I said, look at it like this. Think about the worst thing that could ever happen to you. You send an author on tour and they're murdered. That's what they're trying to avoid. And this is on a presidential level. So it's on steroids. And I was like, wow. Okay.
Ooh.
Now I know that Columbia Jones was murdered on tour.
I love it.
There you go. I love hearing where things come from. Like, that is so cool.
Yeah. One of those little piecemeal kind of, I wonder how I'm going to do this. And it just all fell into place. It was meant to be.
Oh, gosh. And the twists and the turns of this story all the way into the last gasp of the final page. Because I texted you. You
did. You made
and I won't say what I texted you because then I'll give it away. But our pal Ariel Lahan is a Truby plotter. She goes by the Truby anatomy of story plotting. You say it melts your brain. But you have some incredible articles and essays about craft and writing on your Substack. So tell us, how did you plot A Very Bad Thing? This is such an intricate story. How did you craft it? Like, what do you use to do that?
So it's really interesting that you asked that, because I don't like to outline. That's I like the organic process of finding the story as I go. I usually know a lot about the characters.
Yeah, I like that too.
Yeah, that's the fun of writing, right? Is to discover the story as you go. Yeah. But for this, I was trying to figure out, how am I going to tell this story, and who do I want to, because the main character is dead, who gets to tell her story? And I was reading a book by John McPhee called Draft Number 4, which is his autobiography of how he builds stories. He's a New Yorker writer. He's written for them for many, many years. And I have a reporter in the story. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to have some first source research from John McPhee. And on the first couple of pages of this book, he has a diagram. He was struggling with how to tell a story that had multiple points of view about a character. And instead of writing about the character, he thought it would be a good idea to let the other people in the character's sphere write the story. So it's actually, the shape of it is a circle with a dot in the middle. And everybody who is involved in Columbia's life gets a point of view of what is going on with her. So that's why she didn't have her own voice, because everybody was talking about her, which I think is really also very much how the world works right now, right? I mean,
yeah,
people talk about us all the time.
I don't know if they do, because we don't get to hear it.
We don't get to hear it. But if you go online and somebody hasn't tagged you, and yet they're talking about your book, and they're talking about, they saw you on Friends in Fiction, but you don't know that they're talking about that. That is one of the weird things about being an author. This public life that we're not even involved in because the readers get to do their own thing, right? Art is a very interesting part of what we're doing if you think about it in those terms.
For sure.
So did you plot it after that? Like
Yeah.
once you knew all the voices? No. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just so curious because literally so many threads tie together that I'm thinking, how do you hold it all?
Right.
Right.
Well, Scrivener. I
You
work
use
in
Scrivener too. Yeah. So do I. That's a real, when people talk to me about not being able to hold it all, I'm like, if you have Scrivener, you see it all on the tabs on the left-hand side. Like, you know, it's there.
Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of that, it sure seems there is room for a sequel. Is there?
So my film agent once said to me, always keep in mind what season 2 might be. Right? So if you ever get picked up, think about Big Little Lies, right? What was season 2? That book was so done, right? But
Yeah.
they had to cook up a season 2, and Leon came in, and they came up with a new story and all of that. So I've taken that to heart, and I've been writing books that they're concluded, but there might be a little open end that we could take into season 2. And I know that's frustrating for the readers, but it's done very purposefully in case anything gets adapted.
What interesting. Yeah.
So it's, and plus I always like to leave you with a little lingering question, of, oh, wow, the story's over. Everything's concluded. Everything's wrapped up. You have not necessarily a happily ever after, but you have a resolution, and you know who did it, and the downstream effects of that. But you can't answer every question. There's always going to be something out there that you need to maybe readdress. So it's my season 2. It's whatever,
I hope there is, because that's amazing.
It would be it would be a really cool show.
Yep, I agree.
Okay, so there are a number of different points of view in this novel. We've got Columbia and her daughter, and the journalist, and a super fan, and some secret points of view. So how do you decide who tells the story, or is that just one of those things that's a part of kind of the unraveling process?
So that's a superb question, because it's something I always struggle with, is whose story really is this? And it's Riley Carrington's story. She is the reporter. She is the one who is really the main character. She is brought in to go on tour with Columbia and write a piece for a New Yorker style magazine called East Fifth magazine. And she is the only reporter that is invited to come and do this tour. And Columbia has her to the house, and they lay out some ground rules, and she's just so completely starry-eyed of, oh my God, this incredibly famous author not only wants me, likes my work, reads my work, and is going to pay me a ton. So Riley really is the main character, but there are 8 point of view characters in this story. So it is, again, that John McPhee kind of structure of the little bit of the story from the cop's point of view. Obviously he's investigating the murder. Riley is accused of the murder. She's the one who finds her. Her daughter, Darian, is, the devastated daughter. How does she play into this? And then all of the other parts of it, there's also a short story in it that, is part of her backstory. It's so much fun to I didn't really plan that out. I knew I needed a lot of different points of view, and I knew I didn't want to be like one person gives the same bit of information, right? Everybody you
didn't want to double down on the info.
They have to be able to give their own view of the story, right? Yeah. So no, I didn't. I did and I didn't, right? I do a lot more, I think, thinking about it than I do it's more of an intellectual outline than it is writing down this happens and this happens and this happens.
I love intellectual outline, because that's what we do. Kristy and I often joke about, what do other people think about? Yeah. That's all we're always thinking about. our story, right?
What do other people think?
What do
Yeah.
other people
Like I'm like shopping for our Halloween party on Thursday yesterday, and I'm like and I'm thinking about my character and his motivation and like what I need to add in, and then I'm like, I wonder what other people are thinking about
what
while
are
they're
other people thinking about?
shopping for Halloween.
Now I know. Well, I have a hard time relating to people that really aren't into books. Not just writers, but if you're not a reader, and we probably aren't going to have a ton in common, right? We might have some, sports or something like that, but I've never really thought about what are other people thinking.
Yeah.
That's fabulous. And I'm now going to apply that to.
No, that's part of what's going into our character's head. Like,
I can't remember the first time that we said that, but we were like, wonder what other people, like we were just chatting on the phone one day, and we were like, wonder what other people think about it.
We busted out laughing so hard. We were like, because we were both driving and talking about our books, and we're like, what do other people think about?
Because anytime we get together and talk, that's all we're talking about. Because our offices, it's inevitable. Our offices are in our head.
Yeah.
We can't get away from
it. I like that. Our offices are in our head.
Oh, yeah. True. We can't. Well, we can leave our office physically, but emotionally and intellectually, it will never go away. It's always there, always churning. You never know when you see that little thing that goes, oh, that has to go in the book. Or, even when you were just.
The minute you stop paying attention, the minute you miss something.
Right.
It's really exciting. It's a great
way to
live.
It's exciting.
I agree. Thank you all for, helping us have these careers. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay. So I have to ask you, because I think this is something else that I don't know if we have this in common or not, but so I love the prologue of this book, but I find for myself, a lot of times the beginning doesn't come until after I've written the ending. It's like, I don't 100% know where I need to start. Or sometimes, I don't know if you guys feel like this, but it's like the opening has to encapsulate the whole book in some ways. And I don't know what that is yet. So did you write the prologue first, or did it come later for you?
It came later. Okay. It opens with a letter that starts, "My darling daughter, many years ago, I did a very bad thing." And it did come later. It was part of, I can't say what it was part of, but it was part of another part of the story. And I had a different opening, one that I thought was just incredibly shocking. But when my editor first saw the proposal, the letter was the opening. And when I turned the book in and that wasn't the opening, she wrote me and she goes, "Hey, would you be okay if we put that letter back?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, sure." So
that's a good idea.
The prologue is actually the epilogue of the book that I just finished. So it's two books, and
that makes sense.
I had actually written it for It's One of Us. So this prologue, or that's now epilogue of the new book, has been sitting in 3 different files. I've been moving it around because it's about mothers, and it just didn't fit. It fit perfectly, but then it didn't. And then it fit perfectly in another story, and then it didn't. And then
this time it stuck.
And this time it stuck. And so it's the epilogue of the next book. Isn't that weird? I don't think I've ever had that happen. That something was literally in 3 different
books. Interesting. Okay, well, I have to tell you really briefly, because I think this is a weird prologue story too. And I don't think I've told it on the show, but maybe I have. But so my book, A Happier Life, that came out in June. I was like, when did that book come out? In June.
This year.
I got a new editor like at the very end of like right when we were about to go to press, and she read the book and she called me and she was like, "This may sound a little like weird and hokey, but would you want to write a prologue from the point of view of the house?" And I was like, "Oh my God." Like I wrote a prologue from the point of view of the house, and we decided to take it out. So we put it back in like at the very last minute, but I was like, that is super weird that like I thought it needed a prologue from the point of view of the house, and then we decided to take it out. And then having no knowledge that there was originally a prologue from the point of view of the house, she asked me to do a prologue from the point of view of the house.
So clearly that's what the story was begging.
That's what the story was demanding.
Oh, yeah. I was like, I think I can manage that. I sent it to her like 3 minutes later, and she was like, "Oh, you're really fast." I was like, "No, I just had already written it."
Yeah. And this also solidifies my theory. I have a lot of theories, that often books grow out of a book before, right?
Yeah.
That there's this big like root system of our work, and they grow out of other pieces of our work.
I agree with
It's funny you say that, because I just have started to realize that things that I touch on in earlier books, that's the focus of this book. And then I take that thing that I touched on and it's the focus of the next book.
Yep.
I didn't realize I was doing that, but yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Like the
It's like the understory of our stories, right?
Right.
It's down there.
I
That's
love
my
it.
theory.
That's fabulous.
All right, moving along from my theories. Since the main character is a wildly famous author, there is much about publishing and writing in here. You've even included the travails and exhaustion of the road, and did it so well. I was reading part of this on a plane on the way to a book festival, and I was like, yes, JC, yes, yes, yes. But I love when Columbia says this about writing. No matter, there is always tomorrow. Writing is a marathon, not a sprint. So did you channel your own process and experience, and how did that feel to tap into that?
So the worst advice that I ever got was don't write about writers. Because I disagree completely. I think writers are really great characters, and they're really fun because of all the neuroses and all of the process and all of the ways that we really connect with them. And I think everybody likes to have the veil pulled back. It is a marathon and not a sprint. And everything about her writing, I think, is probably me. Her sense of discipline, the way she adores her fans and would do anything for them. Her success is obviously nothing like mine, right? It's nothing like any of ours. She's the epitome, right? She is
Right.
She's the biggest author ever. She is, she's all of the major authors that we all know and love, all thrown into one thing. I mean, Spielberg's doing her book as a movie before it even comes out. I mean, she's got the cachet. But it doesn't matter if you are starting out and you've never been published, or you've been published, with 250 books and millions and millions and millions of copies sold. Everybody has to do the work. You have to sit down with the story every day and touch it and create. And it's the great equalizer. And I think that's what's so fun about writing about writers, is we all have to do the same thing to get to the end of the story. And the more we talk between each other, the more we realize, wow, we're having the same issues. We have the same problems, we have the same fears, we have the same joys, and success or not success, this is art, it's subjective, and good art takes a lot of work, and it's hard. Writing is hard, and I think that comes across in this book for sure.
Yeah.
Right in the end, it's so hard.
I felt seen. I felt very seen.
It's hard for sure. And this one maybe in particular, because you talk about the unsettling things that happened when you were writing this. So can you tell us about that and sort of like how you broke free?
The unsettling things. I mean, what wasn't wrong with this book? Right? Everything was wrong with this book. Nothing worked. There was something that had to happen that I could not wrap my head around. It's something that if I were in that situation, I would not be able to do. And I personalize my characters very, they all, all of our characters are they're us. In pieces of us, whether it's just a shred or they're based on us entirely, but something that has to happen just would not. There's no way I could wrap my head around it. It just wouldn't happen. And I ended up spending a lot of time wasting time, just not being able to make the story come together. And when I finally figured out, oh, that's how it works. That's
God, when the shoe drops like that.
Oh, and it's like, what a relief. Because I was like, I'm not gonna be able to finish the book. Nothing's gonna work. This isn't happening. I just could not wrap my head around why a character would do what they did. And when I figured it out, it was like, oh my gosh. Again, I don't know about y'all, but I have a tendency to overcomplicate things.
Kristy and I call it the kitchen sink.
The kitchen sink.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
Like
when
a
you
whole
just
extra
throw more of
plot
them in.
that we'll just throw in like a whole extra story that like is actually really just a different book. It's just a different book.
yeah,
Kristy.
it is. No, I mean,
It's
that's
true.
the original prologue was a different book, and I took it out
Right.
because it was really cool writing, but it doesn't. It just created so much more story that didn't need to be there. So streamlining, half of my editing is just streamlining the story of what
Right.
Even though I add when I write, I don't take away when I write. I add, but it's because the story is being streamlined, and then I can fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
What other unsettling things have I talked about? I can't remember.
No. I was thinking more about the unsettling things that were happening that you wrote about in your author note that were happening in the real world. That felt very prescient and kind of froze you up. And then you had to break free.
Yeah. The other parts of it. So Salman Rushdie was stabbed at an event and nearly died while I was writing this. And I did almost pull the plug on the book after that because, that it is the biggest fear that I think everybody has, that something could go wrong at an event.
Yeah.
And so that was absolutely hideous. And then there was also a murder in Memphis that
we remember.
Yeah, Jessica was out jogging, and it was 4:30 in the morning, and a guy came and took her and knocked her out and dragged her into his car and raped her and murdered her and dumped her behind a house. And they looked for her for days, and they found her and they got him. And the social media fervor that happened with that, the blame that she got for running in the dark by herself.
That was unbelievable. It's kind of unforgettable, actually.
It really was. And to see that kind of blame being assessed on somebody who was murdered, I thought that was a really not fun thing, but an interesting thing to explore, because that happens with Columbia. There is a huge media explosion and social media hashtags and terrible things happening.
All right. So I would like to talk about an Easter egg I saw. Right?
Okay.
Tell me if I'm wrong. Rothko.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, Rothko is an American abstract painter who was incredibly productive between about 1939 and 1970. And JT, a quote of his is your epigraph, which is, "I'm interested only in expressing basic human emotions, tragedy, ecstasy, doom, and so on." And Rothko is mentioned a few times throughout the novel. Can you tell us a little bit about the meaning of that?
So I love Rothko. He's one of my favorite painters. And every time we come to New York, I go to the Museum of Modern Art and I go into the room and I sit there and I stare at his stuff. And I've been there a million times and I've never seen the wall hanging. As you're walking out, there is his explanation, and that epigraph that I took is right there. And I'm like, and I'd never seen it before. And I've been in that room 100 times. I mean, it was just really, really bizarre that I had never noticed it before. And when I saw it, he was already in the book. The painting was already there. If you look at the club cover, if you look closely, well, where's the camera? If you look closely, there is a Rothko at the end of the hallway.
Oh my gosh, it makes me want to go like this.
Yeah, right? You can do it. You can do it online.
You can do it online.
And she has a Rothko. Columbia has a Rothko. But it wasn't until I saw that quote that I really knew what the book was about and what my raison d'etre as an artist and a writer is. And it's to explore that kind of darkness and the doom that surrounds us. So I feel very connected to him. And sadly, he committed suicide, which is just such a devastation for so many of our creatives that, we're given this gift and it drives us mad in many ways. Which always fascinates me. But yeah, so you saw an Easter egg, and that definitely is. Because
I could see it, and I was thinking, I wonder what the kind of shimmer behind that is, because it popped out at me a couple times, and I always think it's interesting when something we care about people have noticed in my contemporaries, not in my historicals, a lot of people wear Billy Joel concert t-shirts in my contemporary novels. So, okay, JT, we are the luckiest because you are making a big announcement here on Friends in Fiction. So if everyone will just stick around, we have more to talk to JT about. But first, a few quick reminders for our listeners and viewers out there.
Yes, for all of you watching and listening, we encourage you to rush out and buy your copies of A Very Bad Thing. The perfect place to do that is in the Friends in Fiction shop on bookshop.org. You'll be getting the book at a discount and helping to fund our show, all while supporting JT and our beloved independent booksellers nationwide.
And we want to remind you to follow us on Instagram and join our Facebook group, which is more than 250,000 members strong.
Yay.
When you go to friendsinfiction.com, you can stay up to date about everything we have going on, and you can sign up for Friends in Fiction Endless Stories on Substack. All right, drum roll. Tell us your announcement.
Tell us everything. So you mentioned my Substack earlier where I'm doing the writing advice. I actually have been live writing my next novel that's coming out next September. And it started with a title, and that's what's been in the Substack. But the title of the book has changed, and it is now called Last Scene.
Oh, I have chills.
As you can imagine what that's about. It is the story of a woman her father falls and breaks his leg, and she has to go home to take care of him for a little while. And while doing so, as far as she knows, her mother and sister died in a car accident when she was 6 years old. But looking for some insurance papers, she finds an article about her mother's death. And her mother was not in a car accident. She was murdered. And her sister is the one who did it.
Wow.
And it just went your head. I don't want to be in there. I don't know. That is crazy.
That's amazing. Love it.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it. It's going to be, it's very different than this book. It doesn't have 8 points of view. It's only got 3 points of view, and there's a monster who narrates part of it. And it's again, I don't know about you guys, but I have a tendency to swing from big to small to big to small, large and insular. And so this is an insular book.
Oh, so
and
exciting.
Now I get to go back to Substack and do all the type, re-say what the name of the book is, because nobody knows. You guys are the first to hear it.
Oh, so exciting. So exciting.
All right. Well, JT, we know you're in New York right now, but can you tell everyone where they can find you on tour and maybe online too?
No, you can't come find me on tour because no, I'm kidding.
because
I don't want to be
I will be at Parnassus Books, and I'll be out there at Poison Pen in Scottsdale. And also my website is jtellison.com. You can come to The Creative Edge, which is my blog on Substack. And I'm Thriller Chick on all the social media.
It's awesome. JT, thank you so much for talking to us today about your process, about the weird, prescient things that went on behind the scenes, about how you feel about story. Thank you for taking your time with us during such a busy release. It was a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for being on the Friends and Fiction Show.
Yes. And everyone be sure to tune in next week when our 2 other co-hosts, Kristin and Mary Kay, will welcome our friend David Baldacci to discuss his new novel, To Die For. That show will air on the Friends in Fiction Facebook page and YouTube channel on Wednesday, November 13th at 7 p.m. Eastern. And it will be published to our podcast for your listening pleasure on Friday, November 15th.
Thanks to all of you for being here with us. We'll see you next time. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. You can join us every week on Facebook or YouTube, where our live show airs on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Also, subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Instagram. We're so glad you're here.